Most pilots miss the Clipper's purpose, but it leaves 5 clues if you know where to look. The Drake Clipper, a tall, narrow stack of rooms and machinery that feels like it was stitched together from 3 different plans. Nothing on this ship lines up the way you expect. I ran it on delivery routes, took it into combat, dragged it into the shop, and swung open every one of those yellow service bars. And the more time I spend with this thing, the less I understand what Drake was trying to build. Why give a medbed to a ship that's not built for rescue work? Why put the workshop a deck up from the cargo grid? What workflow did Drake have in mind? None of it adds up. Not as a hauler, not as a fighter, and not as a rescue ship. So here's the plan. I'm gonna tear into this ship, upgrade every system, and put her to the test. Because somewhere in here, Drake hid the real purpose of this ship. We just need to find it. Hi, I'm Dusty Star, and today we're tearing into the Drake Interplanetary Clipper. I started running my first test on this ship, and right away, something felt off. The more I tried to use it for everyday work, the more questions it raised. And every time I check another system, the confusion just gets worse. I don't know what job this ship was meant to do, so let's dig in together. Here's the Clipper. Drake calls it a generalist built for solo pilots who want a cheap, easy-to-repair platform. 12 SCU, 4 size 3 guns, and a medbed, all in one narrow frame. It feels unfinished, but maybe that's the point. The Clipper is built as a vertical ship. You enter through the elevator straight to the second deck, where the suit locker and the weapon rack sit. Or you can come through the lower ramp, which opens cleanly into the cargo bay. And it's where a few surprises show up once we start hauling. The cargo bay runs the full length of the bottom deck, and the ladder in the back takes you up to the second level. The Clipper's got missile racks mounted on both wings. They come with an assortment of size 1, 2, and 3 missiles. We'll see how helpful they really are when this ship comes under serious fire in the combat test. The nose hardpoint mounts come stock with Manus GT220 Gatlings. We'll swap these out and put them to work later. The craft bay sits mid-ship just beyond the entry elevator. The machine isn't fully online yet, but stick around to the end. I found a way to make it work for this video. You won't want to miss that. And that's clue number 1, unfinished area. Because Drake didn't build this space as decoration. This room is waiting for a system that hasn't gone live yet. Just past the craft bay sits the med bay, which carries a tier 3 bed. This can be a big time saver. I'll show you what went wrong later in the video. The wing hardpoints come stock with laser cannons on both sides. We'll upgrade these later. I'm sure some of you will be questioning my decisions. The engineering terminal sits behind the medbay on the second deck. Power plant, shields, and quantum drives sit near the back, and the cooler is up front. Right now, these systems are simple, but once full engineering arrives, this part of the ship is going to matter a lot more. Let's pull the stock components, install upgrades, and see how the Clipper handles under pressure. Because if a ship's purpose is unclear, the components usually reveal what the designers were thinking. Before we pull any parts, there's something important you should know. Right now, in this version of Star Citizen, components don't behave the way they will once engineering goes live. But that doesn't make the upgrades we're doing pointless. These choices are based on the numbers we have today. And looking at the 4.5 PTU, these should remain strong picks when engineering lands. The Clipper ships with a Zapjet civilian plant. It works, but it's the weakest on the chart. I lined up options I was willing to trust. I want strong output and a power plant that doesn't fold the first time someone tags the bay. The Breton Industrial has the highest output in the group and the strongest durability. That's what matters on a ship that might take hits while you're still working the job. The numbers today are simple. More durability means more chances to stay alive. We pulled the stock Zap jets and dropped in the Breton. We'll see later in the combat test if that extra durability matters. For the kind of work the Clipper leans toward, I recommend the Breton Industrials. The stock ink civilian shield gives the Clipper a modest pool. It's fine for light work, but if you stay under fire, that pool runs out fast. I compared that against the Cloak Stealth unit and the Palisade Industrial. The Stealth option saves signature, but you give up pool and toughness. The Palisade Industrial gives the Clipper the biggest shield pool and the toughest generator in its size class. Right now, that pool buys you time when things go wrong. And once engineering lands, we'll see how the shield behavior changes. For today, durability is the safest choice for work. That larger pool won't turn the Clipper into a brawler, but it buys you more time to finish the job and get moving. The Palisade Industrial is the shield I trust on this hull. Cooling doesn't affect heat today. What matters right now is how tough the cooler is. If this bay takes a round, I want a component that stays alive. Component durability is the real story here. I want the cooler itself to survive hits, and the Ultraflow Industrial doubles the stock hit points. So I went with the Ultraflows, best durability on the chart. If this bay gets tagged, I want this cooler sitting in it. And later we'll take her into the field and that extra toughness will matter. For the way this ship was meant to be used, I recommend the Ultraflows. The Clipper ships with the Flood Civilian drive. It works, but it's slow, and the durability is low for the kind of work this ship leans towards. I lined up two upgrades to compare, the Atlas for raw speed and the Zephyr for distance and signature. The Flood has the widest range on paper, but the cooldown is slow. Atlas cuts that cooldown time and more than doubles the quantum speed. For a working ship, jump speed and cooldown matter more than range. I want to move between jobs fast, so I went with the Atlas. For the way the Clipper works today, the Atlas is the drive I trust. The Clipper comes stock with Manus GT220 ballistic Gatlings on the nose. They throw a lot of rounds, but they burn ammo fast. And once that belt runs dry, you're done. I compared the Manus against the Panther and the Attrition 3. The Attrition has the highest sustained DPS on the chart, but the Panthers are faster projectiles and hold their damage at longer ranges. So I pulled the Manus Gatlings and swapped in a pair of Panthers. And later in the combat test, you'll see these guns earning their keep. The Clipper ships with Omniski 9 laser cannons on the wings. They're fine at range, fast projectiles, easy to land hits with, but the damage is low, and when the pressure kicks in, they struggle. But for the kind of fighting this ship ends up doing, the Attrition 3 stands out. It puts out the highest sustained DPS in its size class, and it hits hardest when you're up close. And that's exactly how the Clipper survives fights. You're not outrunning interceptors, you're not out-turning racers. You win by holding pressure and burning targets down fast once your pips are on them. For the way the Clipper actually gets used in the field, the Attrition 3 repeater is the setup I trust on the wing mounts. I wanted to find out what kind of hauling work actually fits a ship with a 12 SCU grid. Up at Port Trezler, the ideal contract popped up right away. A direct extra small cargo haul from Kovalex. 7 single SCU crates headed down to the Great Cat production line. I accepted the job, walked over to the freight elevator, and brought the cargo up. And that's when the ship reminded me how different it really is. The loading ramp is in the nose. So I climbed back inside, spun the Clipper around, and set her down with the front ramp pointed at the elevator. With no ship-mounted tractor beam, you rely on the max lift handheld tool. On a small grid like this, it works fine. But look at this grid, 12 SCU, and the entryway is too small to fit size 4 SCU boxes used in normal hauling contracts. And that's clue number 2, weird grid, because this layout fights standard freight work, but lines up perfectly with storing materials you gather by hand. I loaded each crate one at a time and sped through the loading process. For short contracts like these, the Clipper's in its element. Once the crates were secure, I powered up, lifted off, and pointed the nose towards the hangar doors. The ship may look odd, but clearing the station and dropping towards Microtech is smooth. Everything delivered with no issues at all. The Clipper handles these direct extra small hauls without a problem. But running that contract raised a bigger question. That cargo grid feels too tight and too deliberate to be designed for normal hauling. And once you see how it serves the craft bay later in this video, the whole layout starts to look very different. It points towards a purpose most players haven't noticed. Before we get to that reveal, I wanted to push the Clipper's limits. I took her into combat expecting one thing, and it did something very different. That test changed how I look at the rest of this ship. Let me show you. I grabbed a low-level security contract, a simple job. A freelancer was under attack near an asteroid mining base. I needed to clear the area before she got torn apart. 3 targets on approach, Razor, Nomad, and an Eclipse. I started cycling targets to see who was the real problem. The Eclipse looked soft, no shields. That made the choice easy. I closed the gap, lined up the pips, and the Panthers and Attritions went to work. He tried to break, but once a wing came off and spun past my cockpit, the fight was over.
Down now.
1 down. Next was the Nomad, but the Razor made his presence known fast. That thing is quick, and those scatter guns hurt. I couldn't stay on him. Every time I turned, he was already gone.
Could definitely use some support about now. If you don't do something, that ship is toast.
And while I was dancing with the Razor, the Nomad started tearing into the Freelancer. I was too far out to help, so I switched to missiles. First missile connects. I sent a second. It also hit. So I pushed my luck with a third shot before getting too close. 3 for 3. Now the Nomad was running, but he's not fast enough.
I can't! Hold on much longer!
I looped around and finally burned him down.
Take our ship before it's too late.
That left the Razor. Still fast, still a problem. I couldn't hold pips on him for long, but he had to point his nose at me if he wanted to get those scatterguns to land. And that was just enough. Mission complete.
Thank you. I thought we were done for.
The Clipper shouldn't have held up this well, but it did. And every time it surprised me, the same question gets louder. If this ship wasn't built for hauling and wasn't built for combat, then what was it built for? Stay tuned. The next clue gives us our first real answer. I picked up a contract from a client who needs a custom Brenton power plant. Not stock, better. How much better depends on the quality of materials we can find. And there's only one place I know where those materials show up. Bunkers overtaken by Ninetails on Microtech. I waited for darkness. It buys you a little safety from folks who go looking for unattended ships. Griefers and salvagers. They'll either tear your ship apart for profit or blow it up for laughs. I can't afford to lose this ship, so I put her down a little further out. Close enough to sprint back, far enough so someone skimming the area might overlook her. I cut the power and killed the lights. First step, the medbed. I am not a fighter. I am absolutely not looking forward to the pain that comes along with taking a round for this job. But this is the work. If you want to be a crafter in this verse, sometimes you have to bleed for the blueprint. And that's clue number 3. Risk loop, because when Drake puts a medbed on a ship that's not for rescuing folks, they expect the person flying it is gonna get hurt doing the work. I stopped at the bottom of the ramp, trying to see through the snow, and trying to convince myself this was still a good idea. I crept forward, listening for anything that might end this run early. The entrance looked clear, so I bolted for the door. That elevator felt like it dropped forever, and the deeper it went, the more certain I was about to regret this. Maybe I could do this stealthily and not even have to fire a shot. Just find the materials and get out. Then I saw friendly markers, Microtech security, 8 of them, armed and ready to fight. They were expecting trouble. With that many guards, I figured it was safe enough to search alone. All I needed was one box, and then everything went sideways. I woke up in the Clipper's medbed, exactly what I hoped to avoid, but the job wasn't done. When I got back down there, the fight was over, bodies everywhere. And then I saw it, right next to a secured locker, the materials I needed. Then I heard it. One of the Ninetails was still alive and tripped the alarm. And if reinforcements drop in, the first thing they'll do is blow the Clipper apart. So I ran hard. If those reinforcements arrive before I get airborne, this job is over. For the first time, the Clipper felt like she was doing exactly what she was built for. I loaded the blueprint. The system pulled the materials from the cargo grid, and the workstation came to life. This is future gameplay. This is what this ship is pointing to. And there it was, a Breton with elevated stats, built from the materials we risked everything to find. And holding this in my hands, everything we saw earlier snapped into place. And that's clue number 4. Wrong job. Because a lot of folks think a generalist should be good at everything. But nothing could be further from the truth. The Clipper proves it. She fights every job she isn't built for. This is the first moment where the ship stopped arguing with itself. I think I know who this ship is built for, and it's not who most people think. I walked into IAE the same way I walked into the Clipper, guarded, tired of the brochure promises, tired of ships being built to impress a crowd instead of doing real work. Expo halls like this lie. Marketing lies. The ship is the only thing that never does. So I brought the crew with me, put them on access points, weapons, and gear clearance. The work steadies me and cuts through the noise. And somewhere in the middle of that, the Clipper started making sense. She's not a hauler. She's not a fighter. It clicked out there in the cold, in that bunker. It clicked when the medbed put me back on my feet. And it clicked when the materials fed that crafting table for the power plant. This ship was never designed for freight. It was built for the kind of player who lives out in the wild and works alone. Someone who needs a medbed close by because the job is dangerous. Someone who needs materials on hand because the work is precise. Someone who brings parts to life with their own hands. And that's clue number 5, missing role. Because once you stop trying to force the Clipper into jobs she was never built for, her real purpose comes to light. A crafter, a maker, a lone technician who turns raw materials into something valuable and moves through the verse one small job at a time. That's who the Clipper is for. And for the first time since I stepped on board, the ship finally made sense to me. So here's my verdict. Yeah, she earns a spot in my hangar. Not because she's perfect, but because she knows exactly who she's built for. And that brings me back here, to the floor, to the crew, to the year ahead. In this shop, we decide the ships that deserve our time, what we rebuild, what we put to the test, and where our story takes us next. We have what we need. The path is clear. So the real question now is simple. Does the Clipper earn a spot in your hangar? This is Dusty Star requesting landing clearance at Grey Cat facility. Hey, stop! What the heck? Oh! Why is this always so hard?